Fable is my favorite game of all time. And after the announcement of Fable as a reboot, I was extremely excited for it because I have been looking forward to playing more Fable for ages. There is not a mainline Fable game I dislike, and yes, that includes Fable 3. The only Fable that I have no proper opinion on is Fable the Journey, and that's because even as a young man, I knew that there was no fucking way I was going to be playing the Kinect to play a Fable game. And now it's lost media, and I wish I gave it a try because then I'd have a more educated opinion on it, but we move. But after watching the actual Fable deep dive, my opinion about Fable coming back was still very high. But I think that was just the anticipation of getting an announcement and a proper release date and finally having a hard expectation for when I'm going to be getting Fable in my hands and actually playing the game. I think that's where that came from. Because afterwards, when I thought about it and I rewatched it over and over again, I started to fall in the camp of, oh, is this going to be the Fable I knew and loved? And that's my concern now. The developers of Fable, of course, were Lionhead Studios, which was headed by Peter Molyneux. Unfortunately, that studio shut down and Fable was essentially moved as an Xbox-owned brand to another Xbox studio, Playground Games. And Playground Games had made Forza. And initially, when I heard that Playground Games was the dev for Fable, I was concerned because my thought was, okay, the Forza devs are going to make, a Fable game. All they do is race cars. How are these guys going to make a Fable game? But then I thought about the fact that my favorite superhero movies of all time were directed by Sam Raimi. And Sam Raimi, before he got his hands on Spider-Man, was purely a horror film director. He did Evil Dead, he did Darkman, he did Army of Darkness. He did a bunch of different stuff before he was given Spider-Man. So after watching Spider-Man and thinking about it, I'm like, okay, well, it is entirely possible for someone who has no expertise or no background in a certain style to just knock it out of the park. And so I put my fears to the side there and believe that Playground Games had the ability to make a good Fable game. But now, after seeing what they've released and the gameplay and just some of the discussions that they've had around the game, I'm very, very concerned. Of course, the main thing is the fact that they've changed it so that your appearance no longer changes based on the actions you take, because in-game morality is gray. I think that's so boring. I think that's such a cop-out. I don't know why. It just feels like the lamest excuse. And all the other mainline Fables, there were good actions and there were bad actions. There were good things to do and there were bad things to do. And there was a lot of social commentary, even in relation to those good actions and bad actions. But it was just always clear. You could buy a bunch of properties in Fable, especially in Fable 2 and 3. And if you charged an exorbitant amount for rent, more than what is reasonable for the area, you were bad and you got bad karma for it in game. And if you were kind to people, if you donated to the homeless, if you charged cheap rent, if you took care of people, if you upgraded their homes as their landlord consistently, you got good karma for that. There were good things and bad things. If you ate baby chicks, real baby chickens, that was bad. And if you helped people, that was good. If you killed innocent people, that was bad. It was so simple. I think that this newfound obsession with everything being this gray area, I think there's just good things and bad things. I don't think you can't have nuance in a game on top of it. I think you can also make it so that the good things and the bad things can have unexpected results, like Fable 3 did. In Fable 3, at the end, you're basically tasked as the king of Albion with raising a bunch of money to defend from a huge dark demon who's coming to destroy Albion, essentially. But throughout the gameplay, before you get to that point, you make a bunch of promises to a bunch of people about things you will do for them once you become king. And the only way you're able to raise a bunch of money is by either not fulfilling those promises or fulfilling them in a negative way. So one of the promises is you can either make an orphanage for a bunch of, children in Albion and make it really nice and a good orphanage for them, and they have a nice place to go when they, these kids that have lost their parents, or you can repeal all child labor laws and make it a factory that children have to work at. But the factory has a higher profit margin and the orphanage actually costs money. But at the end of all of that, after the whole time you spend raising money, if you don't have enough money at the end, the entirety of the population gets killed. And that's a result of you trying to do the good things. And it kind of sucked because if you do a good playthrough and your punishment for being a good guy the entire game is, well, now everyone's dead, it's unfortunate, you know what I mean? It's avoidable now that you just got to go back and raise all the money back up by other means, so you can avoid that ending. You can have a good ending that has both everyone getting those promises fulfilled and everyone surviving the attack from the demon. But it's just to show that good intentions can have negative consequences. And I think that's something that they could have done to completely do away with the karma system. And now you don't, get a cool halo or, this angelic glow or these demon horns and this cracked skin. I think that was fun. And add a toggle for it then. If you don't want people to feel like their character is not being customized in the way they want, add a toggle for it so that some players can have it and some players don't. But I feel like it was paramount to the spirit of Fable. Every Fable game had it. The first one, the second one, and the third one, they had it all in different forms. And to get rid of it just feels horrible. And they said that they're going off of this pillar that the Lionhead Studio devs had, where Fable is a fairy tale, and that's the expectation. That's fairy tale shit. Growing devil horns for being evil is fairy tale shit. To remove it is to take away some of that aspect. And then they're also saying you don't get a dog. You didn't have a dog in Fable 1, but you did have it in Fable 2 and Fable 3. And I think the dog is it feels like it's such a Fable staple now, because you're just running around Albion, and it's not a game in which you have companions that consistently follow you and engage with you. But that dog was that extra tie that you had, consistently doing things, digging up treasure with you. You can play fetch with your dog. You can pet your dog. In the Fable 2, which is funny, they didn't do it in Fable 3, but it was interesting. In Fable 2, your dog also changed, based on your karma. So they would become a more evil-looking dog if you were bad, or a more good-looking dog if you were good, which is more fun. It's just more reactivity with the world. That is fairy tale shit. But they're like, oh, no, it's all gray. Some people will hate you for being rich. Some people will love you for being rich. You can still have that, but have that system. So my concerns now are, I don't think it's going to be a bad game. I think it's very difficult to make Fable bad, like proper bad. Even Fable 3 was just middling. I would say it's a 6, 7 out of 10. But I don't think it's going to be Fable. And I think that's an issue that we've seen with a Microsoft studio taking over a huge Microsoft brand. 343 Studios and Bungie Studios Halo are two very different Halos. And I would bet my entire life savings that if you ask Halo fans who grew up with, or you didn't even have to grow up with it, honestly, but Halo fans who love Bungie's Halo, if they prefer 343's Halo, the lion's share of them will say they prefer Bungie's Halo. And I don't want to hear bullshit from everyone like, oh, well, the games aren't going away. You can still play the old ones. Yeah, of fucking course I can play the old ones. But if they're going to be making a game in the same franchise, I would like them to keep more of the spirit of the games alive, as opposed to changing all of these things for the sake of new devs, new me or whatever. I don't understand the objective behind it, and it feels like such a letdown. So I am concerned for Fable's launch. I really hope that it's unfounded, because there's just so many things that you need to have in a Fable game for it to feel like Fable. There are a lot. I'm glad they're still doing a lot of the humor. The humor was a huge thing, but I feel like if it's missing those fairy tale aspects, it's not going to add up. I think Fable 3 did a great thing with the heroes' weapons too. Those were super fun. The fact that there were specific weapons designed for heroes that changed based off what the hero did. So if you made more money, the weapon would be more gold because you made more gold. If you killed a bunch of skeletons, it would have bone designs on the weapon. There was a sword, a hammer, a gun, and a rifle. I think that's something that's really fun. I hope they bring something like that back. I hope it's not just we got access to the franchise and we made it exactly what we wanted, and we have no respect for what came before, because they say they do, but with some of these changes, it feels like, are you just giving me lip service, or do you actually care? But fingers crossed the game's great. Thanks for watching. Behave yourself.